Hello everyone, and welcome to the Pup Mommy, where it's all about the pups. I've been a dog owner for over 30 years, and my channel is about sharing with you my practical hands-on experience in what it's like and what I've learned in owning, loving, and caring for dogs. So if you think, am I the only one out there with this problem, or does your dog do that? Trust me, no, you're not alone. Now in today's video, I'm going to talk about the big C. Cancer. How to identify some potential warning signs your dog may have it, what to do and expect if your dog is diagnosed, and is it an automatic death sentence? No, it is not. So let's get started. I'm going to divide this video into 3 parts and put timestamps in the description. The first part is identifying the potential problem. The second part is what to expect when the diagnosis is confirmed. And the third part is what you can do. Cancer is not an easy topic to discuss, period. In my over 30 years of owning dogs, I've owned Bostons, Labs, Dobermans, German Shepherds, but for some reason, the cancer has always struck my Bostons. I lost 2 Bostons, one to uterine cancer and one to a brain glioma, and that one was after several years and several bouts of grade 2 mast cell tumors. A 3rd Boston was felled by a highly inflammatory brain infection known as meningoencephalitis. She had symptoms similar to cancer and actually was being treated with a cancer drug, Cytosar. Now, I'm speaking from my own first-hand experience. Please keep that in mind. There are many kinds of cancers out there, but I am speaking only about the ones that I've experienced with my dogs. So it's with this background that I hope I can help you. Now, first thing to note, cancer is not only found in elderly dogs and elderly senior dogs. My first Boston who passed, she was 7 years old. Still relatively young when you consider that some Bostons can live 13, 14 years old. My Boston Chipper was diagnosed with his first mast cell tumor at age 6. He lost his brother to brain cancer at age 5. So you see it can strike younger adult dogs. So how do you identify something potentially dangerous in your dog? Well, the way I look at it, there are 2 kinds of potential cancer. And I use that word potential because you're not going to know for certain your dog has it until you have it diagnosed by a vet. So as I said earlier, or just moments, 2 kinds of potential cancer, the kind you can see and the kind you can't. Now, if you're like me, your hands are on your dog every day. When you pet them, when you play with them, short hair, long hair, doesn't matter. Your hands are always on your dogs. My hands are at least on top, underneath. When your dog's rolling on the floor, on the grass, when they're lying next to you, you look them over, or at least you should. Now, my little Chipper was a mast cell tumor magnet. He had those bumps and tumors on his legs, on his abdomen, on his paws, and on his hind end. And it was on one day I just happened to notice that Chip had this bump on him one morning when he was laying on his back next to me and my other pup. It was a small, kind of a hard, pea-sized bump. And it hadn't been there the day before. It just kind of suddenly appeared, which is what some of these tumors do. They just suddenly come out of nowhere. And I can tell you that it didn't look good. Now, sometimes dogs can develop what is known as fatty tumors, which are a little bit like fibroid cysts, which 99% of the time are benign. Now, sometimes they're a little soft or they're a little squishy. And, my German Shepherd Zarina, she had one at age, 10 or 11. And then Nabucco had one and he was only 18 months. And these tumors or little cysts or whatever you want to call them by, they usually go away by themselves. Nabucco's did. Zarina's was there. So when you find something, don't always assume that it's cancer. But you do have to watch these bumps carefully for changes in shape, size, and color. Now, I know that the last thing people want to do is incur the cost of a trip to the vet. But when it comes to these bumps, and especially the ones that come out of nowhere, if they are cancerous, which was the case with Chip, 4 out of 5 of them were, if they're caught early, then that is not necessarily a death sentence for the dog. And the other thing I want to mention here, and it is a key point, when Chipper had his cancerous tumors, there was absolutely no change in his appetite, in his activity level, in his temperament. Just by looking at him, you'd never know he had cancer. Excuse me. So err on the safe side. And if you find a lump or a bump, take your dog to the vet. Now, when you get to the vet, the usual course of action is a needle aspiration, which is very similar to a biopsy. Cancer is not something that can be found in a blood test. Now, in each of my little Chipper's cases, the vet and the technicians were able to determine certain abnormal cells on the glass slide under the microscope. Then what they would do is take that sample tissue, send it out to a lab like IDEX, and there a pathologist would do a much fuller investigation, actually grade the tumor. The sample comes back positive, then you probably are going to need surgery to remove that tumor. Now, whether the tumor is removed locally by your vet, or you have to go to a specialist or an animal hospital with vets that have those multiple acronyms after their names like DACVIM, that's going to be determined by the test results, by the location of the tumor, how far, how fast it spread, if there are extenuating circumstances like other previous surgeries or other underlying conditions. Now, in Chipper's cases, the surgeries were performed by the vet who has looked after him since he was 9 weeks old. And normally when these surgeries are done, the vet will take not only the actual tumor, but also the surrounding tissue around the tumor and cut a swath around it to make sure that all the cancer cells have been removed. Now, there was only one case where a tumor was located on Chip's abdomen in such a place where she couldn't make that swath. So I was referred to an oncologist for potential chemotherapy. And I actually did go to the oncologist who reviewed Chipper's file and then went into detail about what chemo would cost, how many weeks it would be administered, what would be the side effects, what would be Chipper's quality of life. And I, at that point, did not want to put Chipper through that. He was 10, going on close to 11 years old. So I chose to risk that my vet, my really good vet, had caught all the cancerous cells. Because as tough as chemo is on people, it's equally tough on dogs, and you have to weigh your decisions very carefully. Is the better answer palliative care? Because again, it depends on what kind of cancer, was it caught in time, where it was located, and also the burden on you too, caring for the dog. Now, here's the other one. We talked about what you can see. What about the problems you can't see? For the potential problems that you don't see physically on your dog, there are some warning signs, or there are signs to watch for when a cancer is internal. In my case with Chipper and the brain tumor that finally killed him, there were signs of how he walked. His leg would slip out sideways where his balance was off. There was a slight tilt to his head, staring off into space, and abnormal panting, circling, and then finally some seizures. In some cases, like my beloved little Poco, who had the meningoencephalitis, she experienced cluster seizures. She was not in any pain, But when you witness those, you feel so helpless. Now, I took Chip to the neurologist when this photo of Chipper and I was taken by her. And she examined him, and he had an MRI performed. She gave me the news that he had a glioma in his brain, that it was inoperable, and at most she gave him 6 weeks. Little Chip died in 3. And on to part 3. What do you do if your dog's been diagnosed? Now, when you are faced with that problem, I cannot stress to you enough to get onto the internet, to start Googling what you've been told by the vet, get the exact spelling of the cancer, get the exact location on your dog, because there are so many research papers that are out there by university veterinary schools and university veterinary schools, but also animal hospitals, along with photos, so that you can educate yourself as to exactly what it is that you're dealing with. The surgery and the chemo, should you choose to do it, is very, very costly. Now, with Chip, one of his mast cell tumors, the chemo alone was over $5,000. And this was on top of the $3,500 surgery bill. Now, there are companies like Care Credit, which is offered and accepted by veterinarians and hospitals across the country. They offer interest-free payments over an extended period of usually 6 to 12 months. Many of you might already have pet insurance. I know I had pet insurance for over 20 years. I have had it. I have it now. And in Chip's cases, throughout his entire life, my reimbursements were over $20,000. And that is on top of what I paid out of pocket. And also by searching the internet, you know, sometimes you can find resources that can help you, help your dog, and actually help other dogs. And by resources, I mean this. With 2 of Chip's tumors, I was able to find 2 university veterinary hospitals, or veterinary schools, I should say, who were running clinical trials on dogs with cancer. Now, with these clinical trials, the treatment, the tests, the treatment protocols, the surgery, and the recovery expenses are borne by the veterinary school. Your expense is to get yourself and your dog to the university. Now, in closing, again, when it comes to the million-dollar question, what do you do if your dog has been diagnosed with cancer? I've already explained that not all cancer diagnoses are fatal, but for the ones that are, the key question to ask yourself and ask your vet is my dog in pain? Is my dog suffering? Because if the answer to that is yes, then do the brave thing and go for euthanasia. Remember, at times like this, it's not about you, it's about the pup. Don't make the mistake I did. I waited too long. And when little Chip was diagnosed with his glioma, and even before that, I was in constant contact with his breeder. In fact, I've been in contact with her throughout Chip's life. And she encouraged me to take it one day at a time and not be too hasty, because he would have good days and he would have his bad days. After going through the cluster seizures and the heartbreak with my dear beloved Poco, I promised myself that I would not let Chip go through the same thing. I would not let him suffer seizures like Poco did. And on the day that this video was taken, Chipper later seizured and fell off the sofa. I immediately cradled him in my arms and called the vet. telling them what had happened and that I was bringing him in for euthanasia. On my way to the vet, Chip seized in the car and fell off the front seat. By the time I got to the vet, which was only 5 minutes from my house, Chip was seizuring again in my arms as I was carrying him. I still beat myself up that I put him through this. And Chipper died in my arms 20 minutes later. So for all of you out there who have this predicament, like me, who tries to move heaven and earth for my pups, you have to be realistic too. When their suffering and their quality of life deteriorates, then say a prayer, if you're so inclined, and do the right thing. All the years that you will spend loving and owning and caring for a dog, when they are sick and when it is time for them to pass on, that is when they need you the most. And with that, I will close this very unpleasant topic, but one that had to be, I think from my perspective, one that had a video that had to be made, because there are so many people out there that are facing what I faced. So if you have any questions or you need help in finding the right pup for you and your family, I'll leave my contact information in the description section. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you'll be notified of my next video. Thank you, and bye for now.